We are streaming and we are live from downtown Mill Bay. Please get out your notes. You're ready to go.
7 in my basement.
Recording.
Yeah, we are recording.
Oh, hi guys. Graham and I do not have children in our basement. We don't. Any allegations against that?
I wanted to read your
so
book.
excited for Rock Band because the pedal is so much fun to use.
It looks so fun to use.
There
I
everything,
like it, and then it feels so awesome. Like seriously,
Chuck, let's go.
Bam!
you have
And
to be honest,
anger
that was
of a
that
gentleman.
sounded awesome, didn't it?
It did actually sound
Liam
good.
Baker, are you
It was hard to focus on my normal things, so I was trying to listen to it so much that I was like messing up my day.
The strings felt different though. Like they felt like they were covered in soap. Does that make any sense?
That does not make any sense. Why did you say it like that? Bro said that the strings on his guitar felt like they were covered in
I
soap.
told Mr.
Like,
McGill.
what?
Are you here
What
before
kind of-
break?
I told Mr. McGill that. I said, yeah, that makes sense.
It's just the biology notes?
That does not make sense.
Oh, you left earlier.
That
Maybe it's a thing with the pedal.
Because
is
it wasn't handed out.
feel like so.
Put the pedal to the metal.
But no, I mean like they felt more.
There we go.
Put the pedal to the metal and the child's move.
You didn't.
Oh, come on,
What?
back.
That's disturbing.
Because
What?
you
I
also,
don't believe in you.
we have a quiz next week.
Oh,
Based
no.
on
Do you believe in the world?
two worksheets. The quiz is open worksheet.
What's your opinion
So
on
if you
Trudeau?
know the worksheet and you understand it, and you will have it with you, and you will be able to.
Say the
The quiz won't have identical questions, but it'll be.
I'm in the mood.
That's just to make sure that you can have your own worksheet. Okay. Yes.
I feel like the mood
But one
would be
more.
much easier to fake than the sun. To be honest. If you had to fake a celestial body, which one would it be?
You had to what?
If you had to fake a celestial body, which one would it be?
God.
It's not a celestial body.
Well, have you seen God's body?
What's that supposed to mean, Mr. Bell?
Oh God.
It's a celestial body.
I meant like sun,
It's like,
moon, Venus.
You need one more. Probably.
Yeah, Cain.
I will continue to look for it. We're going to start on the line partway through class. I'll grab it from whatever pile of honey that is
What
here.
day?
At that time. Late next week, like Thursday, Friday. Well, it's news. No, it's not. These are lies.
I'm very open.
No, you're not.
Okay,
I literally just said I was.
we were here last day.
what? I was here.
Oh yeah, the mule thing.
Yeah.
That was a fun conversation.
Oh, yeah.
And ring species. And now we're going to do the overall structure of DNA. In
Oh,
order
yeah, the
to.
geography.
If you should take geography.
We are focusing now. Your notes are out. Sir? That's not the time to tell me because we're starting to start class. Let's go. The time to tell me would have been, 5 minutes ago before class started. Why are you late? Oh, no. If he only decided to start talking now, he's late. No, it's late. No, it's just too late. Gentlemen, you are late. You had the whole tutorial to run on time.
We were on.
Okay. In order to form chromosomes, we've got to pack that DNA 2 meters worth into one single cell. So, DNA must be densely packed. I don't know why I capitalized every word of that. But we start off with a DNA double helix. In order to get, gentlemen, you are late, but you are getting your workout. You're not talking to others. You're being quiet, going quickly. Pencils in the back. DNA double helix is wound around, essentially to get it to pack properly, we add material, and you think that would take up more room. But just like if you take a bunch of papers and cram them into a box, if you actually efficiently put them into a shape, you can fit even more papers. If you take a string and wrap it around a spool, you can pack it tighter than if you just threw the string into a container. And so DNA is no different. The spool in this case is the histone protein. These proteins are called histones. A biochem professor at the University of Victoria that I took a course on, his entire degree was focused on histone protein 2B, I think. And that's what he did all his work on, one tiny little part of DNA packing. You take that and you loop it around, and you get chromatin. So take the DNA double helix. You can see there's a bunch of histones in there. They loop around, and now we'll represent that as a single ball. And you tightly pack the DNA on there. Then those themselves get tightly packed. Those themselves then wind around to form a larger structure, which overall becomes eventually the chromosome. So when it's this structure, just the wrapped around string, that's chromatin, and then you have condensed chromatin. There we go. What is one of these called when it's not in a butterfly, but you just have chromatid? No. My R and my O are moving together. Still. The word chromosome is reserved for the larger unit, so you can call a chromatid pair a chromosome, but technically you can also call a chromatid, I spelled it with an E, just noticed that. My brain must have objected to the lack of identity. But a chromatid is also a chromosome. Two of them is, it's like you have a pair of pants, but really you just have pants, it's one pants. But if you only have one leg of pants, they're still pants. Pant? Yeah. Going all the way back here, this is a chromosome. It's chromosome 1. So we refer to the pair as a chromosome, but we would also refer to one of them if we had to as a chromosome. English can be weird. So chromosome is the term, the larger term, means those generally. Chromatid specifically means just one of them. So the one you get from either your mom or your dad. Okay. So if we were to do that, what is that little ball? Histone. What would this be? Chromatin. What would that be? Condensed chromatin. We go along. We're going to now rewrite the instructions from here. So here we have the DNA double helix, and this does the process. And so we're going to write the instructions. One, DNA double helix. And then, because I find it difficult to write that small without having everybody, oh, look, there it is. And then everybody will say, Mr. Schmidt, what does that word say? I go like this, ha ha. That should work for you too, if you just highlight that spot on your paper and just change the color. Apparently, I am the only one who found it. I say part of a chromosome because I have found that there is a particular way that this has been taught that some students have an erroneous belief, much like believing that deoxygenated blood is blue, which of course it is not.
That's such an odd thing to bring up at this moment.
How many of you have been told that deoxygenated blood is blue?
I was actually told that.
Yeah, actually.
It's not. I've done this in class. Like I did the whole story and I slashed myself.
What is the story?
No, you're fooling me. I've said this story.
No, you haven't. I've never heard the story.
Okay. In biology diagrams, when we do biology diagrams, we have arteries and veins, and the arteries are always shown as red. And, well, not always. The oxygenated blood, which is most of the arteries except for one, is shown as red. And the deoxygenated blood in the veins, except for one, is shown as blue. And that is solely to show the difference on a diagram. Your blood, if it is oxygenated, is bright red. And if it is deoxygenated, it's more of a darker red. It's red in both cases. It's in a heme group, it's dark red from the iron. I was told it was blue by my biology 12 teacher, so when I learned otherwise in the university, I did not believe them. However, by that point, what year was it again? Third year? I had access to the lab and my own independent experiments. We had there a plastic, it just came in a flat plastic bag. It had an inlet and an outlet that you would take the plastic, you attach it to a nitrogen tank, and then you could blow it up in terms of it would just make this giant plastic structure full of nitrogen gas. And then you had gloves that would protrude out and you'd push your hands into the gloves so you could work inside. So you could do chemistry experiments with things that reacted badly with oxygen under a pure nitrogen environment. It was a really cheap way of making a nitrogen fume hood, essentially. So it had an inlet and an outlet, because of course you have to get things out of there and you set it up. So I set that up. I took the plastic gloves that were part of it and I tied one off so that it was flush with my skin so gas wouldn't escape, and then cut the glove off so my bare hand was exposed in a nitrogen environment. Because I said to the teacher, no, I've been told it's blue. And he says, well, if you cut yourself, it's always red. And I said, yes, but that's because it's reacting with oxygen in the air, which is what the teacher told me in biology 12. And he said, no. And I said, you're wrong. So I cut myself in there under a nitrogen environment where there could be no oxygen, and it was still red. It turns out, having a degree in the subject and being at university and a professor, he probably knew a lot. But I did an experiment, and I successfully managed to prove it to myself. In retrospect, I probably should have just believed him, but it was also kind of a cool experiment. Also, now that I said it's a cool experiment, you should never do that. You could accidentally cut yourself too much, and it would be dangerous. Yes?
I'm resting my elbow.
You're just resting your elbow. Okay. The other one is this is, for example, this could be chromosome 3. One from your mom, biological mom, and say one from your biological dad. Is that chromosome 3? Why not? Is this side from mom and that from dad? Is this just from mom? Is it just from dad?
Don't they swap?
Do they swap? This is just from mom. If I was to draw the one from dad, I'd have to draw a whole new one. And that would be the one from dad. This is also chromosome 3. This, and this is the part where I think some students have gotten confused by diagrams, does not equal this. What happens is when you undergo mitosis, these have to duplicate to be split in the middle. So these become that, split, and then they go back to being these. right? So this is a chromatid. This is also a chromatid, except this is a pair of chromatids. They're identical. They're genetic clones, like they're identical. There's not one from mom, one from dad in there. I've seen students label mom and dad. I'm like, what are you doing? And then I realize, when we say there's a pair, that looks like a pair, and that makes sense. So it completely makes sense why students are confused. I just want to make sure that you don't go off and embarrass yourself in university and then make a whole nitrogen tank and cut yourself open and like peel apart your chromatids to see what it is, because that turned out to be kind of dumb.
Do they never switch? Like,
Pardon?
Do they never switch?
Switch in what way?
Don't they like swap? Or, yeah.
That's in meiosis.
Yeah. Like this is just if mitosis, you're just like mitoses. That's how you grow your toes. You're making identical cells. Meiosis, you will separate them. And the one from your mom will go into one egg or sperm, and the one from your dad will go into the other egg or sperm, and they're all randomized. Yeah. But these are the same thing. These are not the same. Okay? Just to be clear. And the only reason you see these is because of pictures like this. Biologists started off, all we had was the light microscope. So all you could see was blah. And so the only time you ever saw a chromosome is when it was getting ready to duplicate. So the only time you saw it was in this phase, and this is a butterfly. So all our drawings of chromosomes are from one specific phase of mitosis. A phase they're not in 99% of the time. So that's a bit artificial. But we draw them that way because that became the most famous picture of them. In the same way, have you seen this diagram on science things?
Yeah.
What is that? Like what model did we learn that looks like that? It's an atom, but which model is it? Is it the Bohr model? No. It's not quantum, it's nothing. This existed, I'm not kidding, for like 2 weeks at the beginning of the Bohr model, and then they started putting them in things. But marketing companies saw it and thought, science! And then used it on everything. And that's the only reason it exists. It's a marketing model. It is not a scientific model. It did exist for a very short amount of time as a model, but then they quickly, Bohr figured out they go in layers. Okay. Anybody need this down for longer? Proteins. Living cells contain a lot of proteins. When I say the word protein, what do you think of?
The little bits that your cells use to communicate to do things.
That's very specific.
Ribosomes?
I mean, it's true. Ribosomes, what do ribosomes do? They create proteins. But I mean, like generally, if I asked you to point to a protein on your body right now, what would you point to?
Everywhere.
Where's the major protein? What are you pointing at?
My brain.
Your brain? Your brain contains very little protein. There is some protein because it is in every cell, but your brain's actually mostly fat. Yeah. Your skin is mostly fat. If you need lots of protein, what do you eat?
Meat.
There's meat. Any plants high in protein?
No.
Peas.
Beans.
Beans have a lot of protein. Like if you wanted to show off your protein, and you'd walk up to someone near the beach, hopefully, and you're like, "Where's the beach? Is it that way?" And you start flexing all over the place. Your muscles are protein. So proteins are structural. Is the first visible part. You have muscle. You have, now when you pointed to your head, the other one you would have said that would have been good would have been hair. Hair is protein, mucus is protein. And yeah, they're in little bits. They're used for communication between the cells. There's a lot of functions. We're going to do like a bunch of functions of proteins later. But sort of on a gross, larger level, it's like hugely structural. But this isn't why proteins are important in terms of organisms and for DNA. It physically makes stuff. But the main one why your DNA gets to control every aspect of how you develop is because proteins are also enzymes. What is an enzyme? Let's go back to chemistry.
Like your digestion.
Your digestive system does have enzymes.
Doesn't it like,
What do they do?
doesn't it like
They break down food.
They break down food.
Liver enzymes.
And what is breaking down food is a chemical reaction. Why do you need enzymes to do it? Do you remember this reaction? Like this diagram? What? What is this part? Activation energy. So let's say this is a digestive process. This is the reaction for digesting lactose. If you have an enzyme, this is the process. What does an enzyme do? Make it quicker. So, lowers activation energy. I'm just going to do that since it's already up there. Reaction, go fast with enzyme. Reaction, if you don't have the lactase enzyme, the one that's used to digest lactose, you're not lactose intolerant. The reaction can still happen. It just happens so slowly that your digestive system doesn't have time for that. You'll get rid of it long before that's done. So enzymes make reactions go fast. And every aspect of your body is controlled by enzymes. So when you're growing, how long your fingers will grow, where things will grow, are all controlled by reactions. And every reaction will have an enzyme. They won't just happen on their own. So if you're one of those weird mutated people in which your toe next to your big toe is longer than your big toe, and you can like grab things and move them around with your feet because you have weird monkey feet, that's because of your enzyme said, big toe, grow longer, don't stop, and then enzymes allowed that to happen. I have that mutation. It's great. If you're sitting in the tub, you can use your feet to like turn the faucets on and off. It's, I think, a recessive mutation, so not everybody has it, but if you have it, nice, monkey toes. So if you control the reactions, you control how it's going to develop. So enzymes, proteins that lower
How do they lower?
activation energy, often by giving it a better geometry. So two ways to make a reaction happen. You need to have enough energy, and it has to be in the right position. So if you take two molecules and you just hit them randomly, they may not be facing the right way to react. And so you have to react a lot of them with high energy to just get it to happen even once. But if you orient them perfectly, it takes a lot less energy to do that. So most enzymes work by actually grabbing the molecule and orienting it in the right way.
That's creepy. How does it do that?
By grabbing the molecule.
Yeah, but it's a dead thing. How do they like?
What do you mean it's a dead thing? It's literally the definition of
What
living.
does the last paragraph say?
No, it's a part of a living thing, but it's dead on its own.
How you're dead on your own. Yeah. How is it dead?
Does it meet the qualifications of a living thing?
Well, you just said it's part of a living thing.
Yeah, but how does it like turn the proteins in the things in the way that'll make? Never mind.
With energy, ATP. Your body's producing ATP.
It's just freaky.
Yeah. Because living thing is just like, if you want to get, I mentioned species the other day and how biologists will argue. If you want to get a bunch of doctors arguing, try them to coming up with a good definition of death. Because yeah, are they dead? Well, their heart stopped. But we can restart hearts.
Not very well.
Not very well, but that we did use that as a definition for a while. And then, some coffins had claw marks in them. It turned out to be a really bad definition. Yeah, that's the whole, clear! They're turning the heart back on.
Someone's dead. Like dead, you know.
What's dead?
Like
One of the
dead,
cells
but
are dead.
then you keep doing that.
Okay, so if you wait long enough, the closest definition we have, it just goes into what's irreversible and they're not coming back.
Like what if they're like fully like created like raw?
Yeah, and we would all agree that they're dead.
Where's the line drawn though?
Nowadays, brain. Because it turns
That's
out
brain
that
dead.
the cardiopulmonary definition of death is bad in a species that has a lot of heart disease. Because sometimes the heart can stop and restart on its own. And so people, it will, in fact, sometimes it can beat so slowly you don't really hear it. And the person's life, the entire point of a lot of customs around the world to celebrate or bury someone often involve a huge loud celebration, literally are originated to see if they'll wake up again. There has been a few Irish wakes in which the person gets up and, you know, joins into the festivities.
Yay!
Yeah. So in the 1960s, the ad hoc committee for, can't remember the full title, came together in the States. Ad hoc meaning they just a bunch of doctors who said we're tired of this definition of death, came up with a new definition. It has things like they cannot have taken barbiturates in the past 24 hours. They have to have these brain scans register as 0, and then you have to repeat it 48 hours later. This definition cannot apply to a child under the age of 8 because children have brain plasticity, and so they actually can recover longer. So in many cases, child trapped underneath the ice of a pond, their body gets very cold, they stop breathing, they've been dead
What happened to
for an
that?
hour. Pull them out and they would get resuscitated and recover. Sometimes recover completely with no brain damage. Children are wild. But an adult, no, your brain's gone, man.
That happened
You
to
weren't
Alex
breathing.
Trebek.
Pardon?
That happened to Alex Trebek.
Oh, did it?
Yes.
So, yeah, death can be hard to define right at the edge. The ends are easy. Like, that is definitely dead because it's decomposed to the skeleton, sure. But it's right at that line it can get a little tricky. Same as species.
Nothing.
Elephant is clearly different than a potato.
Well,
They
they're
are?
as different as you can
Aren't
get.
we like
They're
really close to
different
potatoes
kingdoms.
within chromosomes?
We're not really close to potatoes, but we share a lot of genes in common because it turns out having an oxygen-based metabolism has to share a lot of similar functions. So all life actually shares a fair amount in common.
Is there anything big?
Okay, no, we're going to keep going. There's one other thing I want to do today. I want to get to the end. We have to do a couple of definitions. Number one is genes. One gene makes one protein. So every gene makes one enzyme. So if you can't digest, if you're lactose intolerant, you lack one gene. If we could give you that gene, CRISPR's coming, you wouldn't be lactose intolerant anymore. There's a variety of low-hanging fruit of genetic diseases or conditions that we could cure with CRISPR just because it's just one gene. We fix that one gene, you're fixed. So they're starting that process now. This is chromosome 1. If you look all the way back to here, so we're talking about this chromosome, we're talking what genes are on it. And I just wanted to show it to you. When I started university, there was something called the Human Genome Project, where they wanted to map the entire human genome, every single chromosome of one once. It wouldn't be the entire human species, of course, not every individual or anything, but just do we know what bases are there? It didn't mean we knew every gene. It just meant we sequenced it. What A, T, T, C, G, G, we sequence it once. And then we could look for stuff. This is the number of genes just on chromosome 1. It is not complete, but the Human Genome Project is complete. When I started university, they said they were 50 years away. And by second year, they said 25. And third year, they said maybe 4 years, and they completed it by the next year. They started off very difficult hand-based chemistry, add this and that, and then you very slowly sequence it. By the end, you added hundreds in little tiny vials that computers would then shoot lasers at and detect spectroscopy, and you would get results extremely quickly. So they modernized and automated a lot of it, and then it turned out to be fast. 23andMe does not map your entire genome. They just look at parts. because a lot of the parts are basically the same. And so they just look to see what the differences are. But if you want your genome mapped, you actually can. You could do a whole genome project just on you. It's expensive. It's really expensive. But it's not like buy me a ticket to the moon because I'm a billionaire expensive. It's more like, a couple of new cars expensive. So like, you really wanted to do it, you could. These are the genes on one chromosome. We don't know all of them, so this is the other difficult part. These are the ones we know. There are blank areas where we don't know if there's any genes in there. It could be junk DNA. You have a broken gene for vitamin C production. Every ape except for humans can make their own vitamin C in their liver. We can't because we all have a genetic condition that process broke. So in a sense, we all suffer from a metabolic disorder that gives us vitamin C deficiency unless we are very careful to include it in our diet. We've actually found that particular gene. That's another area. We could fix that. Then I could never have to eat fruit or vegetables again. Oh, no, right, there's fiber. Never mind. Anyway, all these blank areas aren't done, but there is a fair number we are now figuring out and know, and so now we're filling in the gaps. Yep.
Was the human genome processed on just like one guy, or was it like
No, because it didn't really matter. If you're mapping chromosome 1, it doesn't have to be the same chromosome 2. There just had to be a complete set.
Okay.
Yeah. So as far as I know, it wasn't one person.
I thought it'd be funny if we were basing all of this on just one person.
Yeah, that it's all Helga. It's all Helga's DNA. Oh, that reminds me of Gila. I will do that story now. Gila is a bit of a sad but also fascinating tale, but that's for the future. No, I can't.
Why?
Later. It's about cancer cells. Okay.
Oh, her. She's
Yeah.
still alive, just with cancer.
Last.
What?
What time is it? Yeah.
When you have an extra
She died
chromosome, aren't you like smarter?
Alive. Things of cancer research.
Like if you got an extra chromosome.
If you have an extra chromosome, that's going to disrupt the normal signaling of the chromosomes you have there. So the most famous example of an extra chromosome is Down syndrome.
Yeah, but aren't they like real smart?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, no. And there's other conditions in which you have an extra chromosome. You don't have Down syndromes, but you may be infertile because you have an extra Y chromosome. And so it messes up the signaling to make proper gonads. And so your sperm don't develop properly. There's a variety of genetic conditions we have. But what they normally do is they interrupt normal signaling. You get too much or too little of something. And so it's not necessarily better. However, you do have access to, like overall, you have more information. And so if that became a permanent thing and then evolution was allowed to work by killing off the offspring of yours that didn't work as well, it very quickly might be useful to have more genetic material hanging around because that's more stuff to mutate.
The fact that that even with an extra chromosome they survive, anyone survives, freaks me out just slightly.
Okay. Also, I was just arguing with someone about this the other day who were like, humans are the most evolved. And I'm like, no. Because what's the date today? January 11th, 10th? 10th, 2025. We are just as evolved as the eagle that was out there this morning on January 10th, 2025. We've all existed as a species for the same amount of time. We like to say we're better because we have brains, which is basically our brains voting for brains. If you were an eagle, you'd probably say that they're better because, wings voting for wings. Everybody has a niche. It doesn't take a lot of complexity to make brains. We have about 20,500 genes. The mice beat us. I think onions are around 52,000 genes. There's a lot of plants that have a huge number of genes. I believe there's also a species of amoeba, one cell, that exceeds our genetic amount of genes. So it is not an expression necessarily of intelligence. In fact, sometimes there's animals that have a huge number of genes. We don't even know why. Their environment is not that complex. What are they responding to? But some sort of history happened. Maybe their environment can change and they can survive. They may have genes in there for different conditions. We don't really know. So it can vary widely depending on what it is. Yes?
So 1 grain of rice has more chromosomes.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we eat a lot of chromosomes.
We eat a lot of chromosomes. Yeah.
delicious.
Carbon,
Fruit flies are delicious.
phosphate, sugar.
Every chromosome has the same genes in the same position. What time does this class end? 11:45 or 11:30? 45. Did that. I'm going to do that, and then we have a bit of time. You have a 5-minute break. You may get a glass of water, go to the washroom, pull your phone. 5 minutes. Yep. You betcha. Oh, just there?
Oh, you didn't write anything on
I didn't write anything there. No.
Question. What was
Answers.
I can't remember what the question was.
Brains, genes, eating chromosomes.
If we reactivated the vitamin C gene,
Yeah.
like, would it just, so like, how, if, when we create a altered gene, would that, if we did it in one person, should we expect, this is more like match, would we expect the gene to spread around?
Would it provide an advantage?
And so it would.
Would they have more offspring that survive compared to other people? And the answer is 1%, maybe. As long as they have some children survive, and then you get a little group. If they now, would they survive better in modern human times where we have access to property? In fact, one of the hallmarks of human civilization is allowing people to survive that otherwise would not survive in worse environments, because we've learned to value brains over everything else. So allowing someone to survive increases our genetic diversity, allows more types of genes to survive, and also allows more brains to be around.
How old, how long dead can we still sequence the genes or something?
We've done woolly mammoths, I know that for sure, and we've done Neanderthals. So a
Do
while.
Neanderthals, did they have the broken vitamin C gene?
Oh, that's a good question. I have no idea.
Because, so here's the question, was it?
I don't even know if someone's even asked that question.
Wow.
It turns out, oh, someone's asked it.
Just like tell me.
Oh, okay. I'm getting it from Ask AI Chat. Shut up. Someone has asked the question. So basically, did Neanderthals get scurvy? Oh, we'd be able to tell because scurvy leaves traces in the bones.
Is this still not one? No. That's your best sale.
Oh no, I'm completely wrong.
Yeah, no.
No.
It's not that one anymore.
Simple nosed primates includes apes, monkeys, and humans. All can't make vitamin C.
What are complex nosed primates?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. I've been saying lies.
Interesting.
Yep, so yeah, they wouldn't be able to. And I must apologize to the other apes and monkeys. That would mean
What's so simple about our noses?
what primates can synthesize. I've been repeating this for a couple of years. Vitamin C. Probably I just misremembered it, which is a fancy way of saying I was wrong.
But y'all are, everyone's the same subject, bro.
Everyone's in freaking
Science.
everyone's science, everyone's math.
True.
You should just talk to me.
Julian Champion.
No, I'm just
Funny,
kidding.
like library type question.
You should
have allowed us to live longer.
I already know what class I'm
How?
Because it is absolutely essential for living longer.
Oh.
So, when we lost it,
This class.
our bodies had to produce a completely different transcription factors to deal with the extra oxidative stress that the lack of vitamin C would give, and that turned out to be better
So what's the other
than
one?
vitamin C.
English.
So, the kind of primate that can produce vitamin C.
Yeah.
So it's what?
This
Someone.
strepsirrhini.
Yeah. Oh, so they're the little weird big-eyed
They're
ones.
basically the lemurs.
The lemurs. Okay. Interesting.
And so, and apparently they
No, it's not mine.
Pardon?
when I looked it up, it says set apart from because of their complicated face structure. What does that even mean?
Yeah. I don't know. Okay, making attention. Put your phones away and get on your notes back again. I have a correction. I told you that we can't make vitamin C, which is true. But I also said that apes can't, which is not true. Bo asked the question, and I looked it up, and I discovered actually all monkeys and apes, except for what looks like the lemurs, can't make vitamin C. Our common ancestor that lost the ability to make vitamin C is apparently the point at which lemurs and what they called, what was it, simple-faced?
Simple nose.
Simple nose apes can't make vitamin C. And I was looking up to why, and sorry, there's a little bit aside, but this is. What? No, I don't want that. I want this one. Oh dear, it's gone. Is it gone? It's shut down. I had the paper up, but it looks like my browser crashed. Oh God, it was. Well, I hope it's also still recording. What it looks like, because we lost the ability, does anybody know what vitamin C does? Like why you have to have it? Other than like you get scurvy, which sounds bad.
Keeps you together.
Keeps you together. Vitamin C, have you heard of the word antioxidant?
Yes.
Yeah. Antioxidant's not a nutrient. If you see that this fruit is high in antioxidants, it doesn't mean very much. Lots of things are. It may not necessarily mean that it's better. We don't even classify it as a nutrient. You get it from tons of places. You also make antioxidants. Vitamin C is a specific antioxidant that you need. So the vague antioxidant term, was it palm? They make pomegranate juice in the weird fancy bottles. They actually got sued successfully because they said we contain more antioxidants, therefore we're more healthy in advertisements. And that's technically wrong. You can't make that claim. So now they just say, they imply it's healthier without saying it, and that's completely allowed. Anyway, because we lost our ability to make vitamin C, that has a significant effect because vitamin C is an antioxidant, one you need, that prevents damage to things like your DNA and your tissues and sops up. Because every reaction we have, because we're oxygen-based in our mitochondria, or breathing in oxygen and burning stuff, gives off oxygenated byproducts that can be toxic, and those need to be mopped up. Vitamin C does that. When we didn't have it anymore, our bodies had to make a different one that we still had, because we have lots, and that one just turned out to allow us to live longer. So it turned out losing something gave us a huge advantage. So if we got it back again, you might also shorten your lifespan. This is why I should do all my genetic engineering on other people. Valuable lesson there. Also, we need on average 10 milligrams of vitamin C per day in order to not get scurvy, which you cannot do from a pure meat diet. You need fruits and vegetables, and I think that's one of the reasons why humans spread out, is they had to explore to find areas where you could get enough fruits and vegetables, and then when an area would become exhausted, we would move. Or, if you're the Inuit, where do you get your vitamin C from? Because in the wintertime, you don't have fresh fruits and vegetables.
Organs.
Yeah, specifically the seal eyes, raw seal eyes.
Oh, wonderful.
Apparently delicious and high in vitamin C.
Don't eat polar bear liver.
I would try to stay as far away from a polar bear as I could.
A single bite has a fatal dose of vitamin A.
I think a single bite from a polar bear would be fatal no matter what. Okay, back to this.
That was a good one.
It's a real knee slapper.
Every chromosome has the same genes in the same position as its partner, but the genes on each chromosome can have slightly different base sequences. They can be different genes, but they're the same type. So for example, and I'm going to introduce some new terms, I'm going to define them below, but I think you might know this from last year. These, big B, little b, are what's called alleles. They represent a type of gene. So in this case, I'm going to say big B represents the allele for brown eyes. You know, that completely average eye color that is clearly less than blue eyes, which is obviously superior, which is what I have. Don't worry, we all hate green. Lowercase b would be the allele for, it actually, if you have blue eyes, you have a slightly increased chance of getting cataracts when you're older, so, yeah.
But we do have better night vision.
We do, yeah, that's true.
It's trade-offs.
Yeah?
I heard if you had blue eyes, it means there was like incest, like in your family. Or,
That's not necessarily.
I regret to inform you. Humanity as a whole was reduced to approximately 1,000 breeding pairs 120,000 years ago. We had a near extinction event. Almost every human being on the planet was wiped out due to ecological, basically climate change at the time. And we know we inbred because every other mammal has like 100 different blood types. What do we have? We have A, B. O's not a blood. O's a blood type, but it actually isn't. O is just the absence of all other types. It's like it's a type in the same way baldness is a hair color. And then we have RH, which was discovered after. Just those four, just that. We went through a near extinction event, and just on our blood typing alone, you can tell there was a lot of inbreeding going on. Yeah.
All blue eyed people do share a common
Now,
a long time ago.
you could say the same about any recessive trait because for that to become predominant, it had to be present. Did I talk last day about how you make breeds of dogs?
no.
I will. The perfect time to bring that up because if you have red hair, it's a similar problem. But I'm first going to do some terms. When you have both of the exact same alleles, so you have both genes for brown eyes, they're both the same. What is that called? I think you did this last year in Meta. Yep. You didn't do like Punnett squares at all?
No.
Grade 8?
I,
These are lies.
I know.
Okay. I'll do the first one. You'll be able to tell me this one. We have two of the same genes. It's known as homozygous. Yeah, because obviously you would be able to like just guess that. So homozygous, homo meaning the same, zygous refers to the genetics. So what would you guess having different ones would be called? Heterozygous.
That's a fun word.
Heterozygous. Now, this is not like a rule. Like it's not like homozygous always and heterozygous always. But in general, heterozygous is better.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because if you have a genetic disease and it's a dominant trait, which means if you have two copies, even one copy gives you the disease, how likely is it for that to be removed by evolution? Like as soon as you have it, you have the disease. Very likely. Because if you have the genes, you're probably not going to have as many kids. Or your kids aren't going to survive as well. So evolution tends to take care of dominant traits that are bad for you. But recessive traits, they can stick around because you can have the metabolic disease and it could never express because you have a good copy. There are thousands of different metabolic diseases. Now, the odds of you having one in particular, they could be like 1 in 10,000, 1 in 140,000, 1 in 20,000. But when you consider the fact that there are thousands of them, the odds of you of having 1 to 3 are actually pretty high. You probably have a metabolic disorder in your genome that has been running in your family as a recessive gene, and you just don't know. Now, the odds of you meeting someone else that also has the same recessive gene, pretty low, because it's 1 in 40,000, 1 in 120,000. So your kids are going to be fine.
Mostly.
But let's just say, I don't know, yourself and your sibling just don't find anybody else in the world to be good enough as each other. Real Game of Thrones thing going on here.
Royal family.
Yeah, I know sometimes it can be hard to hold yourself back, but I'm going to give you the reason why you should not mate with your siblings. Because, let's say, you have a variety of genes. You have
That's just the Greek. Wait, no. Yeah, that's Greek. Those are the Greek words. Just like how trans means the different in Latin, that means cis means the same.
let's say, this is mom. Nope, that's dad. This is mom. And there's just a series of genes. We write alleles as capital and lowercase. We're going to do Punnett squares later, so get used to it now. When it's capital, it means it's a dominant gene. When it's lowercase, it means it's a recessive gene. Let's say these two people fall in love, get married. It turns out this gene, the lowercase b, is a variant that has a disease. This is bad. But because almost nobody has it, mom doesn't have it. What are the odds, given you inherit one from your mom and one from your dad, what are the odds that kids will have one copy of that gene? There's a 50% chance. So now, if the children have children, what are the odds that those children will have both copies will be lowercase b and lowercase b? Higher or lower? Than lower? Because you have a net before, the chance of this person meeting someone else with this was say 1 in 40,000.
Oh, wait, so you have to. Oh.
So now,
So it's a
it
higher
was
chance of
50-50.
it's
Yeah, it's a huge chance.
50-51.
And you have multiple probably genes that are not that great if you have both of them. And so this is why inbreeding is bad. It's bad not because any particular moral standing. It's bad because you concentrate genes that are not necessarily good. You're more likely to have a genetic disease. This is why in areas where this can become endemic. Now, the classic example is, you might be thinking like, why, I would never do that. Why do I even, like, this is a weird topic, Mr. Neufeld. In Iceland, they actually have an app because the people living there came from a small population. It turns out everybody is everybody's cousin. So they have an app where everybody's registered, and literally before you date someone, you both put your phones together and you see how closely you're related before you date. It is also important because this is so bad, we actually have some mechanisms when you grow up, and this is true of all mammals. Most mammals, if they grow up together, it actually doesn't even matter if they're adopted. Part of that process of growing up together is that you don't consider them a mate. Like, that's weird and that's icky. And sociologically, we have taboos against that to make sure people don't do that. If, however, two children were born, and then they were separated at birth and adopted by two different families, and then they meet later in life, not knowing that they're related, it has been shown over and over again that they are more likely to form a romantic relationship than with a stranger. They're not entirely sure why, but they think we have the ability to smell familiarity, and in some way, if you didn't grow up with them, that's attractive. So if you happen to have been adopted, just be a little careful out there so you don't pull a Luke and Leia Because the classic example in fiction is Luke and Leia in the first movie falling in love and sharing a kiss, and then later on you find out they're brother and sister. Yes?
There was a community of Amish people that was almost wiped out except for 2 families. They were rediscovered. Like they were hiding from the American government. They were discovered in like the mid 1800s, and half of the people had blue skin because of a genetic disease.
Yeah, it concentrates that. You find that in a lot. Now, this is not like people deliberately going, oh, brothers and sisters. Often it is like 2, 3 families, children meet, then they grow up, and now we have. Well, I don't want to date from that, but that family parents are also my uncle and aunt. Like they're all just happen to be really closely related. By the way, genetically, obviously, siblings bad, parents and children really bad. Cousins is where you're starting to get the level, as long as it doesn't happen too often. Cousins has a slight increase in a genetic disease, but not a ton. Legally, some states make it illegal, some don't. If you talk to a doctor, cousins can be okay, but if they keep doing it, very quickly you can accumulate genetic damage. And so just, if that's a thing that your family does, try and keep it to once every like 3 or 4 generations. Okay? Yes. Like, no, you can't fall in love because Uncle Harold did it last generation. You gotta wait another generation. Okay?
But Mr. Newfeld,
Yeah.
would you let your kid date your like niece or nephew?
Good God, no. However, you are not here in Canada in the modern age. You are in a village in which 3/4 of the population was wiped out due to a flooding event. There is nobody else around. Like, you are in a remote area of the world. What choice do those children have? They're just gonna, date their neighbors who just happen to be also their uncle's kids. Like, so sometimes it's often a product of just historical accident. And you can find this in almost every population at some point this has happened. If you're, for example, you have German roots of any kind, you are slightly at a higher risk for a particular metabolic disorder that affects your mitochondria. The risk is, I think, 1 in 40,000. For the average population, it's 1 in 800,000. So at one point in German history, a small group of people concentrated that gene and then eventually grew out from there. In the Akanakashi Jewish population, there's one, I think, involving the number of fingers?
Polydactyly.
Yeah. In almost every population, there's a unique, and so it's happened in human history repeatedly. Because sometimes villages just get wiped out, and there's only a small band to survive in this little valley until they can recover. And so, yeah, it's not like people choose to do that. It's like when there was no choice.
Having extra fingers is dominant.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's probably not that also deleterious. Like, it's not probably immediately fatal.
Yeah.
Either. So those can stick around.
Well, that's
So,
That'd be sick.
and the reason you probably read like blue eyes means some inbreeding, if every human population has essentially, we think they once had brown eyes, then a blue-eyed kid would be weird, and he or she is never going to meet another blue-eyed kid. So how would that get concentrated? Well, if there is a blue-eyed person in a small group that ends up going through that kind of event, then that would get concentrated as well. And it wouldn't be selected out either, because it's not like it's causing anything bad to happen. So yeah, but they would get concentrated as well. Same with blonde hair, red hair. Blonde hair is just extremely light brown, and it's a specific mutation. Red hair is an even rarer mutation. Do you know why we call red hair red when it's not red and it's orange?
because the word orange didn't exist until the...
Yeah, the word orange is new to the English language. Really new.
150 years.
Sadness. Okay. Okay, I want to give you time to work on something, so we're going to finish off. Different versions of the same gene are called alleles,
Why is it the color apple?
Because,
and they create different phenotypes.
Why is it not apple?
What's that word?
And I am going to define phenotype. Alleles?
Yeah.
I am going to
How do you
define it on the next
What
page.
does that say?
different phenotypes.
Isn't it allele?
Don't
No,
know.
I
one
was
above
asking the
it.
one above that.
Alleles.
What do you know?
Alleles.
It's on your page.
It's literally on your page.
Is it?
That word.
Yeah.
Wait, it's the my bad.
Different phenotypes.
Okay, I'm going to define phenotype and genotype right now. I'm going to type it out given the amount of complaints I just got from my writing. How dare you?
Phenotype is great.
Pardon?
Phenotype is written great.
Okay. Phenotype,
Phenotype.
expression of
Phenotype?
a gene.
Yeah, this is
It's an expression of a gene.
Yeah. The pedal is so cool. The pedal makes me feel so cool.
I didn't
Liam.
actually that killed me.
That was nothing. The pedal is makes me feel so awesome. I think you're gonna get a pedal for your solo.
Ahem. Writing notes.
Alright, wait.
You put right there.
Yeah. Also, I use eye color a lot, and you'll find it in a lot of textbooks. And the reasons why is because it just lends itself. Brown tends to be a dominant gene. Blue is recessive, and it's innocuous. There's no real difference between having brown eyes and blue eyes. And if you get into other areas, like, I don't know, skin color, it can get a little bit more active. And skin color doesn't really correspond to that. There are dominant genes for, most genes for skin color are for melanin production, which is the coloring of your skin. And most of them are in fact dominant. If you have them, the more you have, the darker your skin will be. But there are a few that reverse. They actually code for reducing the amount produced. And so there are genes in which you can have two very pale people, and then children inherit the recessive genes that actually ends up making them look a lot darker. So it doesn't lend itself to the normal dominant recessive because there are so many different genes as well as variants that change the color. Whereas eye color is pretty simple to understand, but you should know it is possible, because it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Orange eyes?
For one second, for a couple of blue-eyed people to in fact have a brown-eyed child. It's rare. It does tend to correspond to the normal Mendelian dominant recessive, but it's not 100%. So just because you have brown eyes and your parents both have blue eyes doesn't necessarily mean you were adopted. Although in 90% of the cases it might. Okay, orange eyes. I have never seen orange eyes. I don't think it's coloring like violet. I don't think it's a variant that exists. Is
Orange
it?
eyes do exist, but it's from only in people with melanin. When they can't produce any melanin, their eyes can.
They're pink eyes.
It can rarely appear orange.
I think when they're orange, they're just trying to feel special, and they just have light brown eyes. Orange isn't a real color even; it's just brown.
Okay, if you have a genetic condition, you can call your eye color whatever you
That's
want.
true.
Because apples do different colors.
And apple isn't a word. We've been eating apples for longer than we've been eating oranges.
Yeah.
Oranges aren't real. They're a crossbreed. Their seeds don't produce trees
Yeah.
that make oranges.
Same with,
Same with lemons.
I think lemons are the same. 'Cause I think,
Life didn't give us lemons. We made them.
okay, back. Shh. Stop interrupting. So the genotype is the genes. So a person has a genotype of, say, capital B, lowercase b. One from mom, one from dad. That means you have the allele for brown eyes and the allele for blue eyes. But the phenotype is what they look like. So we would say the phenotype, they have brown eyes. We wouldn't mention the blue because that's not their phenotype. So genotype is the literal genes. Phenotype is brown eyes. We went over the other day where you could have X and Y chromosomes, genetically male, but you grow up morphologically. I kept using the word because that morphologically has to do with shape, but a better term would be their phenotype was female because they didn't respond to testosterone, so their phenotype, regardless of what their gene said, was female. Environment can also change a lot. You may have a particular genotype that means you're going to grow really tall. But if you are starved as a child and don't have any access to proper nutrition, you might grow up fairly short. We've actually found a fairly fascinating area. Although the environment doesn't change your genes, there's epigenetic factors now where your environment can actually turn genes on and off in your gametes, like in your sex cells.
Oh, wow.
So, although your environment doesn't change your genetics, it might actually change how they're expressed in the next generation. And they have now, to the point where it's now not like this is a guess and a hypothesis, but now they've shown this to be true. People whose parents and grandparents underwent horrific conditions, so they were in, they had periods of starvation, there was a famine in the village, all these things happened. Their children will be more resistant to heart disease. They will be less likely to get diet-based diabetes. They're going to, there's all sorts of positive effects because the genes change the expression to adapt to a harsher environment. And so they're like, you need to live longer to have kids because your environment's so harsh. So my grandfather was adopted. His parents kept him in the barn because he wasn't allowed to sleep with the regular kids. He only got one meal a day from the ages of 10 to 15. He was expected to just work essentially like he was their slave, I guess would be the best term. They didn't treat him very well. He eventually escaped. His children and myself as his grandchild would benefit from that in our genes, theoretically. So that is one of my theories, is that it kind of fades out once you get to the great-grandchildren. So for the family, I should horribly abuse my own children. Don't feed them, make sure they have horrible environments. And that way, I'm just looking out for my grandchildren so they have better lives. Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
a good. I'm gonna tell
say
someone.
your grandfather was an alcoholic,
Yeah.
and then your dad's an alcoholic. Does it mean you have less chance of getting like?
You live stronger?
Yeah.
No, I don't think that's been shown for alcoholism. There is a gene variant that makes you more at risk for alcoholism and drug use. And that same gene variant, if you had it, you're also more likely to survive in World War II. That gene variant does have a couple of effects. Number one, you're less likely to get a hangover, which turns out to be really bad because you're more likely to become an alcoholic. And that has a variety of effects whether you get a hangover or not. But it also, the gene variant doesn't seem to mean alcoholic. What it also seems to do is you're more of a risk taker. So in World War II, the safest way to run, contrary probably to every opinion you have while you're standing on the battlefield, is to run towards the enemy. If you run away from the enemy, you're actually more likely to get shot. You won't be taking cover properly, you're more likely to get shot in the back. So people who took more risks and ran forward were more likely to survive battles. And so that gene variant actually became concentrated after World War II. So we had a higher rate of alcoholism. And people with PTSD tend to drink and abuse drugs more often, so that may be complicated. Go. No. Yeah. So it doesn't automatically mean that the effect will be directly related to that. Like if your parents or grandparents were alcoholics and then your liver gets better, it's not. That is a form of evolution known as Lamarckism, and that's not true. But we did find that some genes actually just changed their expression, so you had these other add-on effects. They're subtle. We measure them in on average, they had lower heart disease. But it's not like every child did.
Wait, what was the term?
They're in
Can you be
epigenetics.
Can you
I
get
think.
immune to alcohol? So you just
No, you could make a gene that would make you immune to alcohol. Because all you need to do is split the alcohol in your body, turn it to vinegar, and you would not be able to get drunk from it. You'd have no bad effects from it. Just you have to do it fast enough.
Can you get immune to poison?
No. There's one poison you can develop a bit of a tolerance to. That's iocane powder.
oh wait, and if you're allergic to like a food or something, can you live every day and
That's immunotherapy. I'm on that.
There is some evidence that if you are exposed to something, you're less likely to become allergic. So the old theory was, oh my God, everybody's allergic to peanuts. Don't feed your kids peanuts until they're like 12, just to make sure that they survive. And then it turned out that made a lot of people allergic to peanuts because they never got exposed to it. And now they say introduce foods early and often. So it was my sister-in-law, she was really freaked out because old advice, this was completely new. So she actually fed her baby peanut butter in the hospital parking lot because she was freaked out because a peanut allergy runs in her family. So like if they had an anaphylactic reaction, they want to be right there. This baby was fine. If you expose your children to lots of different allergens, and as well, if you're exposed daily to it, but also at the same time, there's a ton of researchers. It's common, like if you research corn and corn pollen and corn genetics, which is a huge industry because corn is a big part of our food crops, you will eventually become allergic to pollen just because you're exposed to it so often. And anaphylactic sometimes. It's weird that the scientists who study cockroaches, they will eventually become allergic to cockroaches and instant coffee. Only instant coffee.
Yo, why? Instant coffee.
Weird. I wonder when they're roasting the coffee and you never get to see the beans, maybe they forget to clean it properly and pull out the smoked and roasted carcasses of some insects.
Ew,
It is a consistent finding.
that's disgusting.
Yeah. This is your new file.
Yep.
How do you know all this?
I just know things. And I find it really handy to just make stuff up and say it in a confident voice.
Oh.
Yeah.
I see.
I mean, as Abraham Lincoln said, don't believe everything you read on the internet.
What? It wasn't on my job.
You over. You're not an idiot. You're slightly slow.
So, I'm not just like.
I like the sayings of Abraham Lincoln. Okay, I should have erased that sentence. I wanted you to write it, but at least I didn't have the ending one. The gene is defined as a unit of heredity transferred from parents, and normally we'd say children, but I don't like the word children. I've reverted to saying spawn. My children are my spawn. Or, if I want to gross them out, fruit of my loins.
No.
Ew.
I like that one. Old terms. Mhm. An allele is one specific version of a gene. So multiple versions of the type of gene at a location, at a chromosome. So like blue eyes versus brown eyes. For many things in which there is extreme variability, so eye color is like you have brown or you have blue. There are a few cases, you can have green and blue, in which we could discuss different types, but often, it's either on or off. But you can have varying heights, and that's because there's multiple genes that control heights. This is how you can get, your dad was 6 feet, your mom was 5'10". That's tall for a male and a female. Not gigantic, but tall. Both of them are above average. And then the children turn out to be 7 feet. And that's usually because dad had certain genes for tallness. Mom had certain but different genes for tallness. And since they were different, when they combined in the children, they just shot up completely because now they have all the genes for tallness. And that is why I'm 6'5", and my dad is 5'10".
You're 6'5".
I was last time I measured, which was like 18. Probably more like 6'4". You shrink as you get older. Okay, sorry. Anybody still writing? Writing? All good? Okay, last page. And there's no writing on. Oh, there is writing on the last page.
Ew.
11:39.
Oh, is that a
What
fly?
the?
Okay.
Ew. What is that?
This is I think it's a hare, like a tapered rabbit. This is. Please don't call out. These is an example of an albino. It's a very common mutation. Genes are read. Oops. Inside the nucleus. Where are proteins made from last year? Meta. Which organ else? So, louder?
Ribose?
Close. So ribose is the sugar. You're thinking of ribosomes. And ribosomes tend to be found in the rough endoplasmic reticulum. They are rough because they're studded with ribosomes. Oh, and I had a whole line to write that in, and I didn't. There's not much to write on this page. I also want to mention we don't tend to do a lot of genetic experiments with larger animals because it takes so long. We want to do, like, if I wanted to use you for my genetic experiments, I'd like to have set you up. You'd have to like have kids, and I'd have to wait for the kids to grow up, and then they'd have to. It'd take forever. Fruit flies, you can do that in a week. They have extremely short lifespans. So if you go on in biology, grade 12, they often have fruit fly experiments, and you have traits that you can look at in the microscope, like the color of their eyes. And you can have multiple generations over the course of a week and breed them together, see what's dominant, see what's recessive. So fruit flies are often used for that type of experimentation. So have a moment of silence for the hard-working fruit fly. I do recall a political candidate who made fun of the Department of Agriculture because they spent something like $700 million researching fruit flies. Like, isn't that useless? Yeah, researching the number one agent causing fruit damage for our economic production. That is bad. That's why they're researching it. They're trying to protect our fruit from fruit flies. It's right in the name. Understanding their genetics is actually critically important for a nation's survival. DNA has a double helix structure, and so when it's in a helix, it can't be read. It has to be unhelixed and then pulled apart. So it has to be unwound, and the enzyme to unwind it is helicase. You just wish you what? No, you don't. It's not as useful as you think.
Yeah.
What you need is confidence. Pretend you know everything, and you can become president someday. No, that's prime minister, but same concept applies. Actually, Trudeau's resigned, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Better.
Yeah.
The sequel's always worse.
Sequel's always worse. Okay, anybody still writing here? Okay, last one. There is no writing on this page.
I didn't hear him. He was talking.
Oh.
This was taken back when Ms. Walensky first became an assistant house parent inside of Privet House. I'm wearing, of course, the standard uniform. I just wanted to show where does the cell come from. Obviously, I took it off of my skin. Inside there, we've been talking about the nucleus. The nucleus has chromosomes. The chromosomes have condensed chromatin, which is in chromatome, that has histones. That is the spool that is wound around by the DNA. DNA has sections of genes, which makes nucleotides. On Tuesday, that's our next class, we are going to be doing a lab in which you're going to construct a DNA model out of gummy bears and marshmallows. You will be allowed to eat it. However, you will also need to take a picture and attach it. So before then, please make sure you know how to take a picture on your phone and then print it on a school printer. Okay?
Are we doing this by ourselves?
You'll be doing it in pairs. And you need that assignment.
So go with me. I don't eat marshmallows.
This assignment is also
Get all of them.
on your quiz next week, and you will also get to have it.
Oh, naming everything.
Wee.
Whoa.
You have the rest of this class to work on it.
Good. 1 minute.
Yeah, I was trying to hurry. Oh, right, I gave you that one. You
Thank you
need
for the
other-
1 minute to work on it, dude. Really appreciate it.
You throw in more like 30 seconds.
How is it only block 2? I feel like I've been here for 5 hours.
I know.
Sir,
I'm stretching.
stop that.
So I,
No more stretching along.
I'm so excited to go home.
what you said about World War II?
Yeah?
There was an effect that after the war, we
Really?
10 seconds. There you go.
I was on time. Just had to catch up.
I didn't pick up the next one.
Really?
Oh, I remember. I remember why I put them in there.
That is,
Yep.
If you don't have both worksheets, please
What?
don't leave. Come on over.
I
I'm
don't
writing
know
the
who
other
you
one.
are.
I just put them in my
So
bag.
that's a
You're welcome. I didn't do it today. I misremembered how far along they were, so they're going to be Tuesday. The other classes are going to be definitely tomorrow. They're further along. Yeah, I'm going to keep the stuff. I'm going to hide it away so it doesn't. I don't want it in the lab at all.
what a lovely conversation that walked in Mr. Newton and I having.
Oh, really?
Oh, there it is. I put the train on it. My apologies. There you go.
About nothing?
I thought you would have heard it. I'm glad you didn't.
Uh-oh. That doesn't sound very good.
This topic is genetics. We did a lot of work talking about incest is wrong.
Thank you. I was talking about
Yeah.
how there are more male babies born after armed conflict because historically tall men are more likely to survive armed conflicts, but tall men, something in the structure of their genitals make female sperm survive less than male sperm, so there is a higher quantity of males born after war conflicts.
Really?
That's what I've heard.
Oh, okay.
I want you to send me that link.
Yeah, is there data around that? The study?
It's an old study because it happened immediately after World War II because they noticed it after World War I, and so they went to all of the countries that had large soldier populations and tested it, but it was an older study, and it's hard to retest when there aren't very many massive armed conflicts with most of the population fighting.
There's a couple places right now.
Yeah, but you're not going to
I know, right?
So, are you birthing more male children than normal?
Yeah. It's not a question that most people are going to put up with.
Well, that's an interesting conversation.
What?
One day I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna reorganize your cupboards. I opened them and I was
Well,
shocked.
you open these cupboards?
I did. I'm like, what does Ron keep in these cupboards? I'm like, oh my god, they're so just.
Currently, my plan, which I haven't done yet, is that everything just got put away. All the textbooks from up there are going to come in here. Some of this material is going to go there, so that I can organize it properly. Because I want everything up at the front where I would normally use on a semi-regular basis for teaching. Textbooks should be down here, where students can access them at the beginning of the year, middle of the year when they arrive, but not very often. And up here, I want like tech stuff, and stuff that I might.
Okay, in June,
Yes.
I'm gonna help you
Okay.
because, you know,
I'll get
Ron, you need help.
I'll get Wilbur. Wilbur.
Wilbur,
Turn out.
yeah, totally. Yeah, they're so helpful.
I just spilled half of the
You get all this. You eat.
food.
Wasn't the stuff you bring?
Wait, we have 7 minutes until class starts.
Yeah, you got a little bit of time to study for your quiz.
Yep.
Wait, what? Wait, what? Oh, okay. He didn't even acknowledge that.
No,
He just.
you just took it off.
Oh my god.
I like to think that I did that by lying so often that people just now immediately have to double check. I just had a student in the last class, because I was explaining some areas of genetics, which I have a biochem degree, so I know a fair amount, and they're like, yeah, Mr. Newfield, how do you know everything? And I'm like, I don't know, I don't. What I find is if you just say things confidently and lie, that gets you a long way.
Yeah, exactly. What are we doing today?
Today, we are continuing on with solubility. I was originally going to have some sort of lab thing, but it turns out the lab thing we were going to do doesn't exist, and I'm going to have to make it, so it'll be on Tuesday.
Oh.